Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to another fine episode of Record Breakers. I'm Petey, your man with no plan. Here with me is my quorum, my friends. We have none other than Brett.
Hey, hey.
We've got Drew.
Hey, how's it going?
And we've got Patrick.
Hey.
And we are gathered once again to talk about music. This week, the provider of the album is me. Haha, I have the power. And I've provided for the group album that piqued my interest not too long ago when I saw it drop, because I've known the band, known of the band for a little while, and I was very interested to see this latest offering from them. It's going to be Mariachi El Bronx with the album Mariachi El Bronx. This is the third self-titled release from Mariachi El Bronx. And I hope we all remember to grab the right album.
What's the translation on Mariachi El Bronx?
Mariachi the Bronx.
There we go. Just in case.
Before we get into why that makes sense, the Bronx, let's get into expectations. I'll start with Brett. Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Like, I had no idea who the Bronx was, or their other mariachi side. I had no clue. I assumed I was going to be hearing some trumpets, maybe an accordion, and I was hoping for. So I wasn't even expecting English lyrics, but boy was I surprised. But yeah, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Patrick, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I had heard of the Bronx, the punk band, but I did not know they did mariachi music. So I think, like Brett, I kind of know at least the basic concept of mariachi music. I don't think I've ever went out and listened to it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get some horns. I'm going to get some guitarrón. I'm going to get some Spanish guitar. I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Like Brett, I wasn't expecting English, for one, because I had not heard of the Bronx. I had not heard the story behind Mariachi El Bronx, which is an interesting one, to say the least. I had really no expectations. I was like, okay, so it's gonna be... I'm going to feel like I'm in a Mexican restaurant. Got it. Like that was what I was going into this with, was I'm going to be hungry for tacos after this album, and that was all I expected.
Mm-hmm. So like we said, the Bronx is the what forms this group. Started from a hardcore band that started in 2002 by the name of the Bronx. At some point, sometime in 2007, they decided to kind of do an additional project. They were getting ready for their latest self-titled release, again, called The Bronx. It seems to be like that's a thing they like to do. But they decided to do another release called El Bronx, which ultimately became Mariachi El Bronx, at the same time. And then they decided, okay, this is the separation. We're doing punk rock music or rock and roll music, we're the Bronx, and when we're doing mariachi music, we're Mariachi El Bronx. And thematically, this album really does have a very deep affection for mariachi music. It does have those elements throughout, and it features strongly throughout the whole album, right from the beginning. You find yourself reading the album name and the band name, think mariachi, and then within the first 15 seconds, the answer is mariachi. Yep. And that's something that you find throughout the album. And I have to ask, Brett, what were the themes and elements that stood out for you?
There was really, really, really good like song structure. Like, there are some of the songs that, like, if you took out some of the mariachi like horns and you just cut that entire track out, they would stand on their own. It was more than a gimmick. That being said, there were some really, really, really good horns. Like, like there were some horns that were really good. The way that they like harmonize with one another, that's like, you got to know what you're doing to do that right. And they obviously had the chops to do some really crazy stuff with them. There's also a track that had a squeeze box that was used to great effect. But there was some really, really good instrumentation on top of some like very well. I don't know I don't know what mariachi lyrics are normally like, but this was not what I would have thought that the AM radio station mariachi music that I hear every now and then would be singing about. So I was very shocked.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what were the themes and elements that stood out for you? What caught your attention musically?
I think the way to describe this is I don't think it's traditional mariachi, but it is a love letter to mariachi, and it has a lot of elements of traditional mariachi, but it's clearly kind of played by a band that did not grow up being a mariachi band, and I'm okay with that. I feel like it's mariachi music, but it's not quite as foreign as the title might lead you to believe if you're not intimately familiar with it going in. And I've heard this much mariachi music in my life, and now I've heard this much, and that's a good thing because it's good. Like the more the better. This is fun, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah. Drew, what caught your attention musically? What were the themes and elements that caught your attention?
It hit me like across the face as a giant surprise. When you told us it's a punk band doing mariachi music, like in the back of my head, I was always sort of worried because like that brings the connotation of like, oh, they're not going to take it seriously. It's going to be something less than it could be, but it was a rock and roll attitude with a mariachi beat. There's nothing wrong with that. That was very, very cool. It was super fun, super original. The guitar work was fantastic. The horn work was amazing. And that's sort of what it became is like Swagger said, this is not traditional mariachi by any means. My dad has a love for Latin and Mexican music for one reason or another. So I've heard some mariachi in my day around the house, and this is definitely something that builds solidly on that, but it's not trying to be it. It's trying to be like, this is our take on what we think it should be. And it was just fantastic fun. Like it was just really, really good. Like everything about it was really solid and really fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so. It takes the mariachi and kind of does add some elements of rock, punk, and indie music, and it was really cool. And getting into some of the key songs, like I'm gonna undercut everybody and do the record breakers thing, and talk about the first track, called "New Beat." Like I said, the first 15 seconds really answers the question of mariachi with mariachi, and it really establishes it right off the bat. And then it goes into some fantastic songs like Sticks and Stones that try some different things like Nothing's Changed, other tracks like Eternal, and like Everything Twice. I think Everything Twice is really a cool song that I think lyrically does have some similar concepts to the sorrowfulness of some like mariachi songs, but still is very Americanized and different. But yeah, there's some fantastic tracks, and I'll have to go back to you guys. Brett, what would be some of the tracks that caught your attention?
Wildfires stood out as like a very well produced, well written, a song that's the track that stood out more than any that would stand on its own in any genre. You could make that into a country song. Like it was just a well put together track, and the horns were really good. Everything Twice had a really, really, really good earworm quality. I enjoyed the squeeze box that was in that a whole bunch, and like you said, the opening track really told me exactly what I was getting into. But I'll let the other guys talk because there aren't a whole lot of songs on this album that aren't worth mentioning, but those two really stood out in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you? Some of the ones that stood out for you?
I really, really liked Raise the Dead. It just felt really cool. The guitar and percussion were even better than some of the other songs, which they were all kind of excellent on. And it was sort of the other one other than the opener that I really liked, but we've gone on about that. I also really liked the last song on it, Valia, or however it's intended to be pronounced. It was really like soft and delicate and pretty, and it worked so well. The nylon string guitar work was really, really, really good. The horns were really good and kind of, there were strings there to tie it all together. And pretty much like Brett said, you could say something good about almost every track on this. But like the opener and the closer for me were sort of the two big ones.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the tracks that caught your attention?
Well, as I said, the album as a whole slapped me across the face of like, wow, okay, I get it, and this is fun. And that, of course, starts off, as you said, with New Beat. The lyric content being a bit darker really fit with sort of the tone of the music, I feel like, but it had this driving beat. The trumpet melody was great. Like, the song kind of gets you up and like dancing, which I think is kind of the point. Nothing's changed being sort of the slower song, the dancier song. To me, like the slow dance sort of tune was really, really cool. And Raise the Dead, the guitar work in the intro was just fantastic. Like and that like sort of really strong guitar work in that song really sort of resonates throughout the entire thing. Whereas some of the other tracks, you get more of the horns being the more dominating, like technical side of it. Like in Raise the Dead, you really got some really, really fantastic guitar work. And like these guys have said, there's a lot that I could mention. We all seem to gravitate towards the same things, which is funny. But like High Tide, Eternal, like everything twice. Like Brett said, everything twice is an earworm if there ever was one. So the whole album from back to front was just a lot of fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's some really great tracks. It's hard to pick just a few, but some really great tracks and really cool experimental stuff that works on a lot of different levels. And we'll go back around the horn kind of for some conclusions. Patrick, what would be your thoughts on the album overall? Your conclusions about the album overall?
So when a band in one genre decides to do an album of a genre that is not their own, it usually goes horribly wrong. I'm thinking of Aerosmith, who did a blues record that was awful. And I don't know how you screw up a blues record, but Aerosmith did. Korn did a dubstep record, which is literally the worst thing I've ever listened to. And someday I'm going to subject my my fellow podcast makers to listening to that horrible, horrible, horrible album. This is not any of that. This is really, really good. This is a band who, plays, kind of modernish hardcore punk music, which has no elements of mariachi in it. And they change their hats and they're a mariachi band. And, while it is not 100% traditional, it's mariachi music. There's no other way to describe it. It's really good. There are a lot of great musicians involved. It's really, really well executed, which, doesn't always happen with this sort of we're going to try to do something completely different than our normal thing. And it made me curious about the Bronx, and I went and checked out them, and they don't do it for me, but I'm going to listen to more Mariachi El Bronx.
Drew, what would be your thoughts on the album overall?
It was an album that was utterly pure fun. And that's any album like this that I can appreciate not only for the musicianship, which was obviously there, but also for just the understanding of how much fun they must have had while recording this, like in the studio, just like that sort of humor that they take the music seriously, they take the lyrics seriously. But if you go ahead and YouTube Mariachi El Bronx sometimes. There's a
really good video of them on Letterman. It's terrific.
The Letterman one.
They amazed David Letterman.
The AV Club one's good too. They do the Decemberists. They cover the Decemberists, and that was really good. But like, they obviously get that at a certain point, like what they're doing is ridiculous, and they're okay with that. But they're going to be ridiculous, but also be really good at it. So
yeah. Brett, what would be your thoughts on the album overall?
I'll kind of be a little more middling about I like this album. I didn't love it. It's not something that I'm probably going to be rocking out to a bunch. I'm glad that I heard it. This would in the movie-licious scale, this would be more than a meh, slightly under a woot, somewhere in that weird ether. But I enjoyed it. I like when people do something that I've never heard before, and I'm glad that we get to listen to stuff that we would never find. I don't know about you guys, but I would never have happened upon this album in the wild.
Yeah. It's a really well done album. It really does a lot of things well, and like I didn't necessarily have any expectations either, before this album was released, because this album was a kind of a blind pick. I hadn't even finished listening to the whole thing before I decided I was going to do it, just because it was so interesting, and then just on the face of it, and I knew of the Bronx, and I knew that this was a thing. I was like, oh, and when I saw it, I was like, this is probably something interesting to check out. So, but it ended up being, a fantastic experience, fun to listen to. Like, you can kind of groove out on any of this. It's not a novelty. It's really well done. And really, really fantastic overall. And I'm looking forward to. I'm going to check out more of the Mariachi El Bronx. The Bronx is a group I dig okay, but they really did something special and interesting with Mariachi El Bronx. But yeah, that's it. That's our thoughts on Mariachi El Bronx. The album Mariachi El Bronx. Too bad they don't have a song called Mariachi El Bronx, because they pull a full Bad Company. But that's all our thoughts.
You never go full Bad Company.
But now we get to our main event of the evening. We get to our haiku reviews. And I'll start with Brett. What is your haiku?
Of all the genres, the last pick I'd expect was mariachi.
Yes. Drew, what is your haiku?
Punk's Gone Mexican. Never felt like it was a parody or joke.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what is your haiku?
I had no idea what I was getting into, but this is so good.
Mm-hmm. My haiku. True mariachi from a bunch of white punk kids. Not too offensive.
Fact.
Yes.
True facts.
True facts. It's truer. But yeah, that is our thoughts on Mariachi El Bronx. Go check it out. If you can check it out on our Spotify playlist, which I should link more often on the things and let people know about it, but it's there. You can find it on our Spotify playlist. On the very said Spotify playlist, you can find our next album, which is provided by none other than Patrick. Pat, what do we have going on next week?
So I'm going to do a dangerous thing and pick one of my favorite albums of all time, Faith No More's The Real Thing.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to have an interesting talk about it. Hashtag interesting. I really need to stop saying interesting. I'm sorry, DJM. I don't have DJM to point it out for me, so I have to point it out myself. Damn it, B. But yeah, that's it for us. You can find us all over the internet. Patrick is at Swagger. Brett is at HibbityBibbard, HIBBITOIBIBBARD. Drew is at XDrews, or however that's supposed to sound like. I'm at Petey Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. We're at recordbreakerspodcast.com, rebelly.net. Check out all of our shows. Give us a subscription. We're gonna be, getting excited. We're backloading for a holiday season, but we're excited for the next year too, because there's gonna be probably a lot of projects next year for all the Rebellion podcasts. So look out for that. Just keep an eye out. Subscribe.
A lot of good guests. A lot of good guests coming up. We got a backlog of some top talent.
Yes. Some fun stuff coming down the line. So subscribe, because I always post the episodes way early in the day and then tell people late in the afternoon. So if you subscribe, you'll get them early. So do that. But that's it. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo. L. Brett.